Welcome to another episode of Scene Conversations. My name is Stephen Miller. I'm the host of the show. This is episode 6, and we'll be having a great discussion today. Pretty much our topic today is going to be, what do you do when life does not go as planned? I have a very special guest. I've known this man for a few years now. He's a very good person. He's one of the most intelligent people that I've ever met in my life. So I'm very excited for the conversation that we're about to have. So I'd like to introduce no other than my man, Nolan Taylor. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Stephen. I'm happy to be on. I'm looking forward to our conversation together and seeing where it takes us.
All right, man. So we'll go ahead and get started, man. Do me a favor and tell the people a little bit about who you are, about yourself, and kind of the journey you've been on a little bit.
Sure. Career-wise, 16 years, military aviation maintenance and management. And then, I started teaching myself coding and data analytics, statistics, wanted to move into that sector, didn't want to work on helicopters forever. I think I've successfully made that transition over now. My new role as a manager for data analytics and continuous improvement for a major logistics company. And I also have my own company that I'm a founder of called Electron Forge, where we do small batch and custom engineering for basically people who want a product but can't afford to go and make 10,000 of a single product in one run. Or somebody calls and says they just need 5 of something. We're there to help those people. And then also I have a new baby girl. She's 6 months old and is a 5-year journey to get her in this world. But I'm so happy she's here, and she's a reason for everything I'm doing.
That's awesome, man. Ain't nothing like them little girls, man. I got 2 of them myself. They're not so little anymore, but ain't nothing like having daughters, man. Something special about that daughter-father bond. So I know exactly where you're coming from. I know how much she means to you, man. So, yep. So, all right. So when you think about your life, man, was there a time when things did not go quite the way you had planned?
Several. Uh, you know, I would like to talk about my career and the business, but honestly, where it didn't go as planned was my baby girl. So me and my wife tried for multiple years to conceive, and then we realized we were going to have to go down the path of IVF. And oddly for us, I say oddly, but I think it's more common than people know. But the problem was myself, not my wife. And so when we found that out, that was a struggle, just to comprehend that I have a genetic disorder that's going to keep me from having, my own child naturally. So, but we met that challenge and just started communicating, networking with people, finding out, what could we do as a solution for that, and found a doctor who was willing to do a procedure to help us out. And, now we're 5 years into that, but she's here, and it was a long way, a lot of financial struggles along the way, a lot of emotions, but we made it.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So when I think back over, my life with me and my wife, our last daughter, our youngest daughter, it took us like 6, 7 years to have that third child, man. And I know what it feels like, to be expecting something, wanting a blessing, but I do know it comes all in God's timing, man. That's the main thing. So she arrived exactly when she was supposed to. You know what I'm saying?
I,
Yeah.
I,
So
I absolutely believe you're correct. My career's in a better place than it was 5 years ago. Financially, with the company, the company's blooming. It's doing great. My career, me and my wife's relationship, everything is better than it was 5 years ago. We were always solid, but now having gone through that struggle, I think it made us even tighter, and it made us understand each other more. And you're right. Everything happens for a reason.
yeah. So how did that moment, or any moment in particular that you had challenges with, how did it affect the way you kind of saw yourself?
Uh, I think I went through like a roller coaster of emotions for that. When when in when you're trying to conceive and it's not working, you don't know what the problem is. And I think it's easy for a lot of people on the outside looking in. They typically tend to think that it's the woman's, the reason that you're not able to conceive. And I don't think it had crossed both of our minds for a long time that we should both go get tested and find out, what the issue was. And then when I came home from that doctor's appointment and got the call and they said, hey, it's actually a problem with you. It's probably like a birth defect or something. Nothing you can do about it. But it doesn't mean that you don't feel kind of inferior or that your dreams might be stolen, even because now you're looking at maybe I can't have my own children, and so I faced that, came to the realization that, we really wanted a child and we didn't mind if it was half my wife and a donor, or if it was adopted. We don't care. We just want to raise a child. And so, I think that was a learning moment for me, just understanding how to process those emotions. Because overall, I'm not a real emotional person, which, we can unpack that later if you want, and how my wife has helped me along that journey. But yeah, so then you go from, you think nothing's going to go right. You can't get your dream. And then you start talking to more people, networking, and finding out that, maybe there's a possibility. And then you do that, and then you try. And along the way, we would do retrievals, and then get all the way to the end. And it's a month-long process to do a retrieval. At the very end, you have one embryo. And, at our age, they kept saying, well, you got to have more. We don't want to stop getting more embryos until you have about 5. And so we had to do 5 cycles to get to 5 embryos. And it's a long way. Your spouse is on a roller coaster of herself because the medication just has them all over the place. And I feel like I learned to support her better through that. Learned how to talk to her about what both of us were feeling. I think before that, had we not faced that challenge, I'd kind of coasted through on emotions a lot of my life. My wife has definitely taught me how to look at people and see more than the ones and zeros and the yes nos. She's taught me that people are more analog. You could be mad and happy at the same time, or mad and sad. But for me, I kind of see the world as black and white a lot, and I have to actually turn that on and process each person individually to figure that out. And she's taught me that, and this journey has taught me that.
Yeah, man. You said something very, very impactful earlier that I kind of want to talk about a little bit. So I believe you made the statement that about your emotions and how that's difficult for you. Kind of talk to me a little bit about that. And the reason why is because this is going to go totally off in terms of the topic for today, but I think it's very important because I've been hitting on this quite a bit. Uh, the things that men kind of carry that shapes us how we are, how we kind of came up over the years. So if you can, tell us a little bit about why you feel like you struggle with your emotions a little bit.
Sure. So, I turn 40 tomorrow, and I think it's taken me 40 years to realize why I feel that way. Just in the last few years, I've tried to understand it. And the best I can come up with is, I think through my childhood, I saw a lot of adult relationships where they were either broken and they would give up on something that's broken, or they would maintain, but they're not improving those relationships. And I think I saw that from an early age, and I thought, I want to be a fixer for everything. But then I took that too far and I gravitated towards I could fix everything but relationships. I understand every part of an engine. I could rebuild a whole engine, transmission, but I couldn't understand people. I didn't understand how somebody could be happy one moment and immediately sad the next. It didn't make sense to me because my emotions weren't like that. It's pretty level killed all the time. But I think I did that as a shelter, to be honest. Uh, but yeah, and so then I took that into adulthood, and then I realized in my first marriage that that wasn't going to get you too far, and I needed to be more careful about choosing a partner and how that person also interprets your emotions and is there to help you or not, to be a partner. Uh, and then continuing to grow into adulthood, met my current wife 9 years ago, and she basically realized, I think from the beginning, that I had this problem that I never understood. Even when with my own family, I'd be talking to them and we would leave somewhere, somebody's house, and my wife would be like, "You didn't seem like you noticed that they were upset." And I was like, "Well, they weren't upset. They didn't say they were upset." And she'd be like, "Well, it was all over their face." And I was like, I didn't see it. I didn't know that, because I didn't pay attention. I kind of akin that to if I go to lunch with a coworker, I've noticed that a lot of times a coworker, they pay so much attention that they'll know what I ordered the last time we went out to eat. I just have never been that person. I don't remember what they ordered, you know. I remember a conversation we had with them, but I won't remember those little details. And I'm trying to be a better person in that respect. So not only emotionally, but just getting to know, you know, my coworkers, my employees, and just people I meet, like my neighbors and things.
Yeah, so man, I can relate, man. So like for me, I had a good childhood, but I had some challenges as well. When I say good, I had folks that me, my mother had aunts that helped take care of me and things like that. But I was emotionless for a very long time, man, and that was because I lost my grandmother at the age of 7. She pretty much raised me while my mom went to the military. And she was one of the first loves of my life, man. We were extremely close, man. And when she passed away from leukemia, man, I didn't know how to process that, man. So I became very silent, angry, frustrated all the time. And it kind of impacted my childhood, and I didn't deal with it, right? And then I saw some things, coming up as a youngster, where I kind of witnessed things that I shouldn't have seen in terms of domestic violence. When mom did the best she could, she did an amazing job, but at the same time, she had some challenging relationships with men that I kind of witnessed, and I wasn't big enough to take care of and help her out, man. So that kind of, I internalized it. I was frustrated all the time, and that kind of shaped who I was for a very, very long time. So I could definitely resonate in terms of how men, we can become emotionless, and part of it's from my journey from the very beginning. Uh, Also, I like to say too that for a lot of men that we're taught to be tough, right? We're
Hmm.
taught to take it on the chin and keep on moving and not know that it's okay to cry or show those emotions, when it applies. And that's part of what I'm trying to help change is that it's okay, man. For whoever's out there, it's okay. Show your emotions. It's all right. You're not a sucker. You're not soft. You're actually more of a man, if you ask me. And it took me a long time to realize that. So I'm glad you were transparent with me on that particular topic because I know it can be easy at times. So I appreciate that. So I want to ask you this question. So just looking back kind of over the things we kind of talked about thus far, what do you believe those seasons was kind of teaching you? You can go from, your first marriage or your childhood, however you want to explain it, man.
Sure. Uh, I think one of the things I learned in my childhood that I carried into my successful marriage is that I think I saw a lot of partners where they tried to share responsibility, like, and I know that it's kind of a modern take on it, but I don't share it. And my wife would support women's lives. She wants women to have as many rights as men, and I agree. But in the household, I just feel like nowadays that somebody has to take responsibility, and I think that's what's made us successful. Is like for us, the bills are my responsibility. I keep the roof over our head. I keep us in a car that runs, and I shoulder that. You know, my wife she shoulders a lot, and she doesn't need to take that. And I just think you got to identify responsibilities, and then when something doesn't go right, you gotta own that. If you forget to make a payment on something, you got to admit to your partner, hey, I forgot that one, but it won't happen again. So
Yeah,
I think I learned that. I think I learned that in my relationships, that you got to take responsibility, and then it's not just bills. Like if you do something wrong, you got to admit, hey, I did something wrong. Hey, I'm sorry, I was in a hurry this morning, and I didn't notice that you were upset. There's a lot of that. Uh,
yeah,
and like I said, then
yeah,
just seeing a lot of relationships that were broken or mildly broken, then people giving up on them. And as somebody who I hate to see something that's just broken and left to rust, or it wouldn't take much to fix, but people just don't want to put the effort in. And I take that into the relationships as well. That I think you gotta put in the effort if you want something to work well.
yeah, man. You got to put in it what you want to get out of it, man. That's the name of the game there. So Yeah, I definitely can resonate with that. I've been married. Will be 28 years in September, man. So we've been together a long time, so I can definitely relate to, having those responsibilities and taking ownership and accountability based on the expectations from her and I both, that we kind of place on each other. I wanted to ask you this question specifically. Did faith play a role in helping you navigate through any of your seasons?
Yes, I'd be the first to admit I was raised Baptist. I was in the church till I was about 14, and then I went to live with my mom full time, so my dad could work, and then church wasn't important to her, and so I didn't go. I do think that they instilled a lot of the morals and gave me that compass through life. I think it made me a better person, and to this day, I still believe there's something out there. I just can't imagine that there's all this, even as backed into my beliefs as I am with science. I this can't all be here without some higher power. Something's there, So I believe that. I do question my own faith a lot. I don't know what to believe, and I've never had somebody explain it to me in a way that I could 100% agree with. So I've kind of over the years picked pieces here and there, and before my dad passed, I would ask him a lot of questions if he could elaborate on his own faith, because he was very faithful, and I will never live up to the level of faith that he had uh, in anything maybe other than my marriage, because he just, I don't know, I think my dad picked something to believe in, and he believed it wholeheartedly, and for me, I always find myself questioning things, but
Yeah,
but no, so yes, I think it's given me my moral compass, and also allowed me to keep going. And I would be telling a lie if I didn't say that when my dad was in the hospital, I didn't pray. Because I guess at the time I didn't know if praying would help or not, but I wanted him to stick around a little bit longer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I appreciate you being transparent on that. I could say for myself, having faith, it's changed my life in so many ways, man. I was raised in the church as well, but it's not about just going to church, man. It's about having that personal connection and relationship to the source. And then that's God for me, I know that there were times in my life where I questioned a lot of things. I didn't understand it, but when I truly gave my heart to God, that's when things started to change for me. Uh, and I mean, in an abundance of ways, whether it be just having peace in my heart and soul, from that to taking care of my wife and kids, to being able to be the provider that I am today. And then the new opportunities and doors that are just opening for me abundantly because I've given my life over to him. It's challenging to explain. It can be, but I'm telling you what I know from a personal standpoint, that I didn't get here by myself. You know, I've been prevented from so many issues that could have went a whole different direction, but I feel like he spared my life for a different reason. So now I don't want to be too preachy, man, but I'm just giving you my experience uh, with God. So and I promised him all the days of my life that from here moving forward, I'm gonna shout him as loud as I can, man, and try to help as many people as I can. I'm not trying to convince anybody in any kind of way. All I can do is just demonstrate what he's done for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yep. So all right, we'll move on to the next question, which is basically what would you say to someone who feels disappointed because life has not gone as planned? What would you say to that person?
Mm. Well, I do a lot of software, and it's it's fairly often that you'll have a bug in software, and then you go tell somebody, hey, there's this bug, but it works, but there's this one problem, and then it seems odd, but a lot of times you'll tell somebody that, and they'll say, well, I wanted to do that. So sometimes you got to think of these problems in the software. these bugs, they can become features, and I think we got to look at life that way. That not everything bad that happens is a negative. If you just look at everything as an opportunity. So when something does happen, I know everybody's gonna say, look at the bright side, or try to find the silver lining. But I don't think that's always going to be there. But if you look, you're going to find it more times than you don't, and I think that's the trick.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you just described, man, is having faith in a nutshell to a degree because, you know, we all face those trials and tribulations, man, and anytime you have a hurdle to jump over or something gets in your way that wasn't quite planned, what did you learn from that, right? That's the key. And was it for your good? You might have became a better person because of that challenge that you had. Um, Life is not going to always go as planned. It's not always going to go easy. Uh, Sometimes it's worth putting in that work so you can enjoy the other side of the journey too. So it makes you more appreciative of how you got there. So yeah, I appreciate that response there. What should what what should someone hold on to when things feel uncertain or out of control, in your opinion?
Um, I mean, I think you do have to have faith in something. I think you gotta find that thing that motivates you or that you believe in. Because for me, uh, like I said, it's not always been a faith in a higher power or God. There's always been something I believed in, and I could look to that for strength. So for me, I think a lot of times that was my family, and the times it's been successful has been my family. So I would do everything for my wife to get our daughter into this world, and make that procedure very painful. But that what's an hour worth of pain and a couple weeks of being sore to get my daughter in the world, uh, and also my wife was through a lot of pain through that process. It's not comfortable, and but watching her do it, I was like, I got to do it. Like I can't let her down because I believe in us, I believe in her, and I believed in our dream, which was to have a family.
Right.
So what I would tell people is that just find something that motivates you that's gonna get you to keep driving. Because as long as you keep driving, you're gonna find success. It's when you pull off the side of the road that you're gonna break down.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. So you mentioned some of your business adventures that you're into. Kind of tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I started off several years back. Uh, started off small, and I had a customer come to me, and they wanted to. They had just asked if I could design some electronics where you press a button and it raises the front of the car up to go over a speed bump. You press a button, it goes back down. It was going to go on a Porsche. And of course, I was pretty confident. So I was like, yeah, I got you. I went to electrical engineering school. I could do this. And I got about 5 days into that project and realized that school hadn't taught me how to do that at all. What school taught me was how to look up the answers to do it, but they didn't tell me how to do it. There was no blueprint in some book that they gave me. Uh, I just kept at it, kept researching, built that product, gave that to him, was a success. Uh, and then from there, it's very slow to scale initially there. And then a few years ago, when we started really seeing the pressure financially from IVF, decided to actually create the business itself, the actual LLC, and got that started, went legit. And then started doing additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing and designing, and then continued to do printed circuit board designs, and then also started consulting for local businesses for automation, and then for products, and then providing laser cut and laser engraved stuff. So we're in multiple sectors, but we're just looking for anything that people need to fix. So if you have a problem, we want to fix it no matter what it is, and that's the business we're in. So we consult, innovate, and automate. And if you have anything like that, or you just want to get an idea for a product off the ground, we're your guy. And we're happy to go into those agreements with an NDA. So at the end of the day, We design the product. You own every bit of that product. You own everything from the blueprints to the physical component, and we hand that over to you after design process. Or we're happy to stay on the manufacturing side, or depending on what kind of budget you're on, we can go into that without an NDA. And in those cases, my company retains the rights to that product. We build yours for you, and then we market that product on our own side if that's not something that the customer wants to do, and if we deem it as a profitable idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, man, what's the best way?
Sure. Currently, through our website, which is www.electron-forge.com, is our best way. And on there, you'll find a way that you can email us on the website there. And then we have a phone number you could call if you prefer just talking.
Okay. All right, my man. So I definitely thank you for your time today. This was very informative and impactful for me, man. I hope this helps somebody else out in the world, which is the goal. I definitely thank you for your time today. I really appreciate that. As far as seeing conversations, you can check us out on YouTube at W23 LLC Where Your Worship. You could also check me out at whereworship.com, where we sell faith-based apparel, accessories, resources to include books, devotionals, anything to help you identify with your purpose, faith, and/or leadership. This is Stephen Miller, the host of Seeing Conversations. I thank you for your time today. We're out. Peace.